All right. All right. Well, welcome to the Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design, August 6th, 2020. I'm Eric Schultz. I will kind of go through a couple intro slides and then I'll turn it over to our chairperson and he'll read or do his opening statement, and then we'll go back to a couple slides and then we'll get into the meat of the agenda. So again, welcome to the Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design, August 6, 2020. So meeting protocol, this will lay out how the basic meeting will be conducted. Staff will control the slides displayed throughout the meeting. Applicant, staff, board members, and members of the public should give their name first whenever speaking. Applicants and members of the public must be sworn in before speaking for the first time. Only attendees who have a register to speak before the deadline at noon today may speak during the meeting, and I have a list of those individuals that signed up. Video and microphone have been disabled for all attendees. Attendees will only be given the capabilities to speak when they are called on during the public comment period. Board members who need to recuse themselves from voting will be temporarily removed from the meeting and readmitted prior to addressing the next item on the agenda. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. I don't anticipate that happening tonight. Chat has been disabled for everyone, and this meeting, of course, is being recorded. I will now turn it over to Joel Adrian.
Eric, did you finish? You kind of cut out on me.
Yes, I just said that I would turn it over to the chairperson, Joel Adrian.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. This is Chairman Adrian. This is the August 6th, 2020 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. Present are Amanda Barton, Nell Postel, Andrew Hargett, Emmanuel Ferguson, Paula Murphy, Jeff Webb, and myself, Joel Adrian. Present from the planning staff are Eric Schultz and Lee Batchelder. These proceedings are being recorded. We ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, usually the Board of Zoning Appeals treats the matter as being uncontested and passes it as a matter of course. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design has the authority to do three things. 1, hear appeals to decisions to the zoning administrator. 2, grant special exceptions, fact-finding function of the board. And 3, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54.924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate, make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present and qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good. The character of the district would not be harmed by the granting of the variance. With that, it will go back to Eric Schultz I believe for, yes.
Very good, thank you. Public comment. Order on each application. The chair announces each application followed by staff presentation and the recommendation. Staff will call on applicant to present their application before being sworn in by the chair. Staff will open the public comment period to receive comments from registered attendees in favor, first spoken, then written. Each speaker will be sworn in by the chair. Staff will then recognize registered attendees for public comments in opposition after speaker is sworn in, first spoken, then written. Staff will recognize the applicant for a short rebuttal, and then the chair will then close the public comment period and begin board discussion. And of course, providing comments, if you submitted a request to speak on an item before the deadline, staff will call your name when it is your turn to speak and enable your microphone. Your microphone will then be disabled after you are done speaking, and you may only speak once for each item. And you must state your name, address for the record, and you will not be permitted to provide comment. Board discussion. Following public comment period, board members make comments, ask questions, and make motions. After a motion and a second, board members will vote aye in favor or nay not in favor. If a vote is not unanimous, chair will poll each member for their vote. The chairman shall announce the vote on the motion and the final decision on the application. If a board member needs to recuse, he will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back into the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. And I don't anticipate that happening tonight. So with that said, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So this is Chairman Adrian, and an agenda item A1 is Fairbanks Drive, and that is Daniel Island. The TMS number is 271000010. I'll see the application number. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
That's okay. You don't have to read that. That's fine.
Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 8 grand trees in its zone DIGO.
Okay, so this is the application that we put online for any member of the public to view and see their information. And this is a letter submitted with the application that spells out how they feel they meet the hardship. This is a map indicating the property, the subject property in front of the board tonight. As you can see, it fronts on Fairbanks Drive, is bound by conservation zoning, which is marsh, and it does have a zoning of DIGO. That zone district does allow residential development. And the blue area to the east is a already developed condominium project zone DIR. This is an aerial view indicating or showing the property. Again, you can see that it's heavily wooded, a lot of pine, a lot of live oak. Obviously, there's a concentration of live oak along the interface with the OCRM critical line, the marsh. And then you can see some almost lines going across the property, even in this aerial view. There's a few old, what I call old agricultural ditches that were dug years ago, and I assume a lot of the pine are successional trees after they stopped farming. This is an important slide because for some members of the board, we addressed this project in May of 2017. The history on this project is that there was an owner at the time, and he had a team that brought forth this application. It consisted of a landscape architect and an engineer. And after the project received Planning Commission approval for a concept plan, They then came forth with the tree removal. And a lot of effort went into this plan. I was on site numerous times evaluating trees. We actually had some of the center line of the road staked out so we could understand the proximity of road to trees. And all that said, it did receive approval for 5 grand trees at the time, 4 requiring a variance and 1 special exception. And you can see the conditions that were placed by the board and then the approval stamp. Fast forward, that group went away. The project was sold or is under contract. I'm not exactly sure. I'm pretty sure it's been sold to Stanley Martin Homes. And this is a comparison. So over the course of a couple years and numerous meetings with the city basically granted approval for a major or minor changes to the original concept plan. And if you look at the 2017 and the 2020 on the right, the majority of the changes occurred on the interior block. Basically, they got rid of that roundabout that they were trying to force a road through a couple high quality trees. They got rid of some alleys, and they've come back to the city with this plan. The issue in front of you tonight is for the removal of 8 grand trees. And you can see that they're all basically or are C grade trees. I'll remind the general public and as well as you, we asked that a certified arborist go on site and evaluate the tree to size, species, and general condition or quality. And then, of course, I go on site and I verify, disagree, or agree with their findings. So, like I said, I've been out there numerous times. Of course, we've had some storms as the project lay idle. And the A grade trees are green, the blue are B grade trees, and the yellow are C grade trees. And then we have an orange, which is a D grade tree. So after the city reviewed the minor changes in the concept plan, they started to bring the project forth to TRC. Now that is a different level of review. It's more technical and we're getting down to detail. So it soon came apparent that the plan really wasn't going to work in regard to preserving the trees long-term, in my opinion. The site requires some fill to be introduced to meet the minimum elevation of the center line of the road. And they were kind of forcing trees into tree wells and what have you. So again, numerous conversations, and we finally got to massaging the plan a little bit more and giving the higher quality trees the space that they deserve. So in order to move roads and lot lines and what have you, there's a request in front of you for an additional 8 grand trees. This is as the discussions with the city proceeded, we were really concerned about the proposed stormwater management plan. And this kind of describes or illustrates how they're planning to move water off the site or across the site and then off the site. And working very closely with our stormwater department, we threw out all sorts of ideas and tried to say, let's try and keep trees at natural grade, utilize existing ditch lines, look at everything possible to ensure that the trees that will be preserved long term. So this is a drainage exhibit. And of course, they are showing how they'll plant additional trees back into the subdivision. Here are the tree pictures. I know that there's numerous and they're hard to see, but we do ask that the applicant submit photos of each tree. And if you want to zero in on a particular tree, I'll ask the applicant to describe its condition and what have you. But You can see that they've been in this forested situation for some time. The previous group, I actually allowed an arborist to go in and prune out some of the vines and some of the deadwood, low branching pattern that haven't received much sunlight, and just to see the true architecture of the tree and understand how the canopy would be potentially impacted by future homes. These are some of the detailed lot exhibits where there's slight encroachments. So I want to get to this slide in just a bit, but basically that's the project. I want to go ahead to this slide. So I want you to keep this in mind through the discussions. Again, the city zoning staff really was stressing the fact that we want to keep trees and the area around the trees at natural grade. So this is a snapshot of the portion of the site adjacent to the marsh to the north. And this sketch on the bottom will be read in as a recommendation, but I want you to keep that image in mind. So basically, staff is prepared to recommend approval with 9 conditions. The board conditions carry over from the 2017 BZA site design, and I'll go back and visit those if we need to. Must plant 273 caliber inches of canopy trees on the project site and submit a landscape plan for staff review. Keep in mind that the 273 are the additional new inches based on the recommendation for approval for the 8 trees. Must provide HOA areas that are to remain at natural grade between the grand trees and the marsh as shown on the city's exhibit. And I think the slide number changed, but I'll go back. So you can see where I've kind of tweaked the property lines, and I'd like to see those zones remain HOA areas and therefore not have any lot grading occur around those trees and allow for free movement of water toward the marsh. Must use 4-foot chain link fence as tree protection barricade. Must use a non-trench 4-foot chain link fence. That's a detail that we're using. It has some silt fence that lines the perimeter of the tree protection barricade for tree protection barricades for the interior grand trees and protected trees to be preserved. Must have a certified arborist treat and prune all grand trees to be preserved in the subdivision. Must maintain any non-grand trees, as many non-grand trees as possible in the tree save areas. And then select proposed LID stormwater facilities. Again, zoning and stormwater is really stressing the use of LID means of conveying water. Select proposed LID stormwater facilities would have to be installed by hand. So this may be just raking off organics to get water to flow through a little channel if need be, and so on and so forth once we have more detail. And that's inside the tree protection zones. And then number 9, the rear lot lines for the lots abutting the marsh must be, the rear lot lines abutting the marsh must be the visual buffer zone line as shown on the exhibits. And I'll go back and explain that. The visual buffer zone must be an HOA lot or area. So just to explain that, if you look at the exhibit, you can see the lot lines end at what we call our 20-foot visual buffer zone on the north and west side of the project where the marsh exists. So we don't want those lines to extend to the marsh line or the OCRM critical line. We want them to end as shown here. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we have a number of people to speak, and we have a number of emails that I received. So I think what I'd like to do is identify the emails and give if you want me to read them, I will, but I'll give you a brief description of what they say. And then we'll move into the individuals that signed up to speak. Does that sound fair?
Sounds great.
Okay, so on Monday, August 3rd, I received the email from Dan Cloyd, that's C-L-O-Y-D, and it basically says, regarding the same issue, now scheduled for August 6th, after reviewing the City of Charleston Arborist report, it wasn't my Arborist report, I think it was the applicant's Arborist report, subsequent research and consultation with board, we've decided to withdraw the letter. To affirm, our association doesn't necessarily support Stanley Martin's appeal, rather, we will not oppose it. Additionally and accordingly, I don't intend to participate in the August 6th Zoom session. So earlier, they had written a letter from the Oaks at River Edge Property Owners Association, basically opposing the project.
Hey, Eric.
Thursday, August 6th, from Deborah Cutts. I respectfully wish to comment on the agenda item for tonight's meeting.
Hey, Eric.
Yes.
Real quick, that last email saying that they're withdrawing their opposition by way of the letter from the Oaks, is that speaking for the entire organization?
That's a very good point, Emmanuel. What happened, why it was deferred last month, is we were getting information that the applicant maybe had not done enough homework speaking with neighbors and what have you. It's interesting to know that that project to the east, those condominiums, there's actually 2 property owners associations. So at the time, this one particular POA, the Oaks at River's Edge, was, writing to oppose the project.
I understand.
But then it states that they met with the, consultation with our board and research, and I don't know if they actually met with Stanley Martin, but they wrote that they would not necessarily support, rather we will not oppose it.
Right. So is Dan Cloyd withdrawing his opposition, or is the entire Oaks at Riverside withdrawing their opposition?
The original letter was signed by Dan Cloyd, so I think he represents all.
All right, thank you.
So Deborah Cutts, again, Thursday, August 6th. I am Deborah Cutts. I reside at 7735 Forest Street. My phone number is, I'm unable to attend this virtual meeting. I strongly object to granting of the variance. The request is in direct opposition to the community master plan in that these trees represent a portion of our environmental structure which add and maintain the beauty and equal environmental balance. The expectation of this balance is well documented throughout the master plan. Removing these trees does nothing but create a larger financial opportunity for the developer. Approval in and of itself have a negative impact. So you get the gist of that letter. Monday, June 29th, Jerry and Donna Shealy. Dear Zoning Board, we reside at 229 King George Street on Daniel Island. We adamantly oppose the removal of the Grand Oaks. The removal of these oaks was not part of the master plan and will affect the real estate values of the neighborhood. July 31st, Friday, Rebecca, I'm going to call it Beckhold, I guess, Betchhold. I am not clear which day the proposal is being heard and not sure of the item I wanted to address again, but basically further down, she says the request is for the advantage of the developer. There is no sound environmental benefit to the community as a whole, and the property in question is clearly being clear cut, with the trees counted as saved being only scrubby trees along the perimeter. There is an excessive number of lots which result in the clearing of essential all current vegetation. Again, it goes on and just talks about August 5th, Nancy Broski. hello, I'm writing to support Rebecca's note below. So I have, we just did Rebecca's note. So she's just basically supporting Rebecca's. The developer did not reach out to me to invite me to dial in to a review of the plans, but I am unable to participate. I did express my concern about saving the grand trees when I spoke to him. I believe that Rebecca makes sound arguments below and support her concerns. And then June 29th, we have a letter from the other property owners association, Oaks at Riverside South. To whom it may concern, I'm writing this letter in support of Stanley Martin Homes and their proposed project, the Marshes on Daniel Island, as it relates to the impact of our building POA and our ongoing discussions with Stanley Martin Homes. Though our building is only indirectly impacted by the proposed development, we are directly impacted by the proposed amenity center, preserving the area with the alley of Grand Oaks and the proposed marina, all of which border our property. We have been concerned with the protection of the area, especially between our property and Governor's Park, which is the home of these significant oaks. As president of our POA, I've worked closely over the last months with Roger Hunt, project manager for Stanley Martin Homes. I found that Roger and his colleagues have been incredibly open to our concerns about access points, preservation of the trees, and making the amenity center an asset rather than a liability for the community. Our primary concern has been how trails and access to both docks and Governor's Park will be dealt with. That's about it. We have not seen the final plans. We are comfortable that both our needs and concerns will be addressed by Stanley Martin as we move forward. Okay, so now I have two comments, but the individuals have also signed up to speak. We will recognize Robert Lenhart, and I forwarded for the record the letter that he sent us this morning or this afternoon to the members of the board. So they did see it. They were able to put their eyes on it. It's, it's quite lengthy. It addresses the hardship test, but due to him signing up to talk, I figured I'm not going to read the whole exhibit, but he can reference it, obviously. And he represents Lionheart Law Firm, LLC. So with that, Scott, could we unmute Mr. Robert Lenhart? Robert, are you able to hear us?
I am able to hear you.
Okay, very
Excellent.
good. I want to hand it over to Mr. Chair, the chairman.
This is Chairman Adrian, and I'm just going to swear you in for the record.
Sure.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Excellent. Eric, now that we've sworn him in, I'll go back to our protocol and how we do the meeting. We normally would hear from the applicant, those in favor.
Oh, my apologies. Oh my goodness. Yes, my apologies.
Read his letter. He was definitely not in favor.
Yes, I apologize. Yes. So Robert, could we put you on mute? You'll rejoin us in just a minute. Yes, chairman needs to hand it over to the applicant. That's right. I apologize.
Yeah. So if we can unmute the applicant, and then we'll swear the applicant in.
Seaman and Whiteside Associates. Michael Kane. Michael, are you there? And is your team all there?
Hey guys, can you all hear us?
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Hello?
Hello, this is
Hi,
Chairman
hi,
Adrian.
hi.
I'm
Yep.
going to swear you all in, and then the floor will be yours to present the project, okay?
Okay.
All right, so do you all swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Excellent. Then if you would please just state your name, and I believe we asked for your address, name and address for the record, and then go ahead and present.
Okay. Thank you, board members, for your time this evening, and thank you, Eric, for your presentation. My name is Michael Kane with Seaman Whiteside Associates, 501 Wando Park Boulevard, Suite 200, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, 29464. With me tonight in our conference room, I have Roger Hunt with Stanley Martin Homes. I also have Patterson Farmer, our civil engineer on the project, Russ Seaman as well, with landscape architecture. Mike Russell with Natural Directions should be available via phone should there be any questions about the tree assessment for these 8 trees being proposed for removal. And Cheryl Shaun with Nexon Pruitt with me as well. So I'd like to start off by just saying we've been working with city staff for the past 18 months due to serious efforts to saving quality grand trees and modifying the plan to make more room for the quality grand trees on the site. In order to meet staff suggestions and requests, the proposed development now has more open space that provides more room for the higher quality trees, while there has been a reduction in the number of lots compared to its original concept plan. We held a virtual HOA meeting last month with concerned residents and surrounding HOAs to discuss the proposed development. As Eric had mentioned, one letter has been withdrawn and one letter of support since we've had those HOA meetings. We feel that the proposed development respects the natural character of the site by preserving the higher quality trees, utilizes existing topography, and introduces LID opportunities. The site contains elevations as low as 3 feet to 4 feet and as high as 22 and 23 feet in elevation, which creates a hardship for working around every single grand tree on this site. The proposed 8 grand trees for removal have been assessed by a certified arborist, Mike Russell with Natural Directions, and are in decline conditions, grades C and D. I would like to let the board know that 77 other grand trees are being saved on the site, meaning 90.6% of grand trees will be saved. The development plan also proposes to save a total of 318 protected trees on this site. And with that will also come the proposed mitigation per Eric's condition that will also be with including required street trees throughout the development, roughly at least 200 new trees back onto the site. In addition, we also have an entire 40-foot critical line buffer that has been committed to remaining undisturbed, which exceeds the Daniel Island requirements. The buffer will provide adequate screening around the marsh perimeter of the development. Should you have any questions, our team is here. We can answer any questions, but this is going to be a great development for Daniel Island and for the city of Charleston, and we would ask for your consideration for approval tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Chairman Adrian again. Is there anybody else, Mr. Schultz, that was signed up to speak in favor of the application?
That is not the case. Everybody is basically in opposition.
Okay, then I guess we'll go.
There is one point
I have one more.
Oh.
I have one more request, if you don't mind. It would just be a second.
Okay.
In Eric's conditions, we appreciate the support of approval, but we would like to also mention to the board for condition number 3 per Eric's sketch. We can't guarantee that we can meet exactly Eric's sketch, however, because we are restricted by lot requirements for Daniel Island, but we would like to work with staff through the TRC process for condition number 3. And we'll make sure that the trees are in the HOA areas.
Okay, thank you for the point. Eric, I guess we will go back to.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add just one point, and I'm going to zip back to an earlier slide. So on this slide, there was a tree proposed to be removed on the bottom half of the 2017 exhibit, and it's now being preserved. If you look at the 2020, that little row of 3 yellow trees by that triangular pond. So one of those was coming out in the 2017 approval, and now it's being preserved. So if you go back to 2017, basically just 4 trees are previously approved. They worked out where they could save that one additional C grade tree. I just wanted to point that out.
All right, well, thank you. I guess we'll start with those that are in opposition.
Okay, so now we can get Robert back online. And again, he submitted this this letter in which I forwarded the letter to you this afternoon. And Mr. Robert.
Thank you, Eric and Chairman Adrian and members of the board. My name is actually, I go by Cody Linhart. I'm an attorney here in Charleston with Linhart Law Firm, located at 78 Ashley Point Drive, Suite 103. And I'm here speaking tonight on behalf of my firm's clients who are residents of the city of Charleston, reside on King George Street in Daniel Island Park. I know some of my clients are signed up as well to speak this evening, so I'm going to try to speak specifically to the hardship analysis that's required for the granting of a variance, and then the residents themselves, I believe, will speak to some of their other concerns. I appreciate the board and staff making this opportunity available for them and for me to provide these comments. As the board members are aware, the state and local laws in South Carolina and the city of Charleston established the criteria for the granting of a variance. I won't belabor going through all those as Eric has laid those out in front of you, but I would point to the fact that in order to grant the variance, this board must find that the application of the ordinance as written would result in an unnecessary hardship on the applicant, and that the courts in South Carolina have stated that established that this hardship cannot be created by the applicant themselves, nor can the alleged hardship merely be a loss of revenue or some financial hardship as a result of the application of the ordinance. In fact, what they have said is that there must be affirmative evidence that the property suffers a singular and unique disadvantage because of the application of the ordinance, and that granting of a variance is an exceptional power which should be sparingly exercised. In order to make that finding, as Mr. Schultz pointed out, the applicant has to establish, and the board must affirmatively find, that the applicant has carried the burden of proof to establish the 4 criteria that are set out in statute and in the city zoning ordinance. And those are the 4 criteria about extraordinary and exceptional conditions, not applying, those conditions are not present on other property in the vicinity. The conditions in the application of the ordinance to this particular property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the property, and the authorization of the variance would not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property, the public good, or the character of the district. And so it's to those 4 points that I'd like to just briefly touch on, and I've explained in more detail my client's positions in that regard in the letter that was provided to the board members this afternoon. With regard to the first condition and the criteria set out by statute, in this case, the applicant is relying on the presence of ditches and mounds at these elevation changes on the property as their basis for asserting that the property faces these, quote, extraordinary and exceptional conditions. I would say that it's not uncommon, and I think it would be hard to argue that it is uncommon to find former agriculture and silviculture properties that do not have ditches and or mounds on them of some sort, whether it be from side casting or other agricultural uses. You would get these mounds. The ditching obviously was utilized to allow for drainage of the property to facilitate the agriculture. So it's not an uncommon or extraordinary condition on the property. In fact, in a more poignant point on this is that the presence of ditches and mounds don't have anything to do with the granting of a variance to remove 8 grand trees on the property. The mere presence of ditches and mounds is unrelated to the need for the removal of grand trees. There's no other rationale asserted by the applicant other than these elevation changes. And if you were to look back at the application itself that was presented, that singular condition that's noted is these elevation changes. So to that point, and as the board is well aware, in order to grant the variance, the board must find that the applicant can carry the burden, has met the burden for each of the 4 criteria. We would submit, or my clients would submit, that on condition 1, there's no proof and no evidence to support carrying of that burden. With regard to the criteria 2, the sole basis provided to satisfy this criteria is the sentence that there are no other parcels of this size with similar elevation fluctuations or wooded character in the vicinity. Again, in this situation, the applicant's relying on the presence of ditches and dirt mounds on an undeveloped property to assert that this property is different from other properties on Daniel Island or the city of Charleston. We would submit that that's obviously not the case. The applicant also submits that the size of the parcel and the fact that it's wooded with these elevation changes justify the need to remove these trees. The correlation again there is extraneous. I mean, there's no correlation between the presence of elevation changes and the need to remove these trees. We would submit that again, the applicant fails to carry the burden as required by law under for criterion 2. The third criteria, which obviously is that there's the conditions on the property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Again, we submit that the applicant fails to carry the burden there. The applicant in this situation attempts to add a different condition for the evaluation, as opposed to relying on the elevation changes that it utilizes the reasons for meeting criteria 1 and 2. It tries to raise a different condition. In fact, that analysis is legally flawed. The law requires that the same conditions be considered when determining if an application of an ordinance to the property would prohibit or unreasonably restrict its utilization of the property. So to that point, my point is that for criteria 1 and 2, the applicant's relying on the presence of ditches and mounds or these elevation changes, but now says for criteria 3 that it's the abundance of large trees on this site which make it impossible to develop the property without the removal of these grand trees. And that's specifically stated in the application. That's a change of criteria. It's not appropriate for the applicant to now attempt to switch and assert a new condition, the presence of large trees, as that condition at the property that's extraordinary and exceptional to try to meet criteria 3. In fact, as I said before, there was no evidence provided which supports that the presence of ditches or mounds would prohibit the property's utilization. However, if the board is to consider this change in condition to meet the criteria, they must also acknowledge that the presence of large trees in any condition would provide aesthetic, physical, and ecological benefits. The mere assertion that less desirable trees are being culled is a subjective assessment at best. And while the assertions that these trees are impaired, that assertion alone does not deprive these trees of protection under the ordinance or eliminate their intrinsic value and benefits. The purpose of the Grand Tree Ordinance was to protect these trees. It's not to protect only the A's and B's and not the C's and D's. It's to protect the grand trees. We would submit, again, with regard to criteria 3, that the applicants failed to carry the burden and therefore the variance should not be granted. Finally, with regard to the criteria 4 and the detrimental impacts on adjacent properties in the area, simply saying that a variance will not negatively impact an adjacent property, the public good, or the character of a district does not in fact make it so. According to the applicant's own statement, that the property could not be developed without the removal of these 8 trees further confirms the point that the removal of the 8 grand trees is in fact the linchpin to proceeding with the development of the parcel. Phase 1 and phase 2, as it's been explained to me that there are 2 phases, require the removal of these trees to be constructed. And so you have to look at the long-term cumulative impacts that will come from the decision to allow the removal of the trees. And that is the full development of the 17-acre parcel. And what comes with that is what these residents have will speak to momentarily, but it's the full build out of the property that is the trickle down impact to the residents in the area and the opposition to it. Furthermore, it's my understanding, or my client's understanding, as has been explained to me, that the project is to be constructed in 2 phases, phase 1 and phase 2. The trees slated or being requested to be removed, at least 50% of those trees are in phase 2, which it is my understanding, or what has been explained to my clients, is that phase 2 is going to be built at some time in the future. There's no set date as to when that would happen. So we'd submit that in addition to the points laid out, at a minimum, it is untimely to be considering a variance to remove trees on a parcel or a portion of this parcel that there is no immediate plans to develop. And the removal of the trees at this point is untimely. Considering the entirety of the applicant's alleged grounds warranting a variance, we'd submit that it's clear that the burden of proof to support granting that variance has not been met. And as a result, the variance should be denied in accordance with the South Carolina Local Government Comprehensive Planning and Enabling Act and the zoning ordinance of the City of Charleston. That is all I have. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of my client's interests, and will accept being muted if necessary at this point.
Thank you for your time. Eric, do we have the next person to speak ready?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, but before so, as we live in this COVID environment, we have different means of gathering comments and people registering to speak and what have you. So I did receive 2 comments in our venue to submit. And before I move on to the second comment, because that individual also signed up to speak. So comment came from Leslie Stanford. She lives at Fairbanks Drive, and her submitted comment states as, "Don't destroy our view of Daniel Island by taking more trees. The view is why people moved here. The trees should be left to nature." The second comment is by Andrea Kelly. She has signed up to speak, so we'll unmute her, but her comment before she gets into her speaking role: strongly opposed to the request for a variance to remove 8 grand trees. No way. We as a community have had enough of the exceptions. So with that, Andrea Kelly, if we could unmute her, she would be able to speak. Andrea?
Hi, this is Andrea.
Andrea, this is Chairman Adrian. I'm going to swear you in for the record. And then on all the people to speak now, if we could do our best to try to limit the time to approximately 3 to 4 minutes, that would be wonderful. So Andrea, if you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Looks like she's muted.
I'm on my phone.
Oh, down there. Okay. Sorry. Do you swear to tell
Can
the
you
truth,
hear
the
me
whole
now?
truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Excellent. And now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. First, by way of introduction, I would like to state that I have a BS in Marine Science cum laude from the University of South Carolina and a doctoral degree in pharmacology from the University of Illinois College of Medicine, and I feel I'm qualified to speak on this issue tonight. In addition, I live across the street from the Fairbanks Drive proposed development. To begin, we heard from the applicant requesting the variance to remove these grand trees. Quote, "This is a great development for Daniel Island." I, however, cannot disagree more and speak not only for myself, but 417 others who signed a petition strongly opposing the removal of any grand trees from the Fairbanks parcel, given that these grand trees, the health of the abutting marsh, and the quality of life of existing residents are what we consider great for Daniel Island and all residents, including the wildlife. To that point, from an environmental perspective, these trees have great value in any condition. They clean the air, but also provide natural erosion and flood control, prevent waste and pollution runoff from contaminating the marsh, creeks, rivers, and ocean. They also provide habitat for wildlife, including at-risk, candidate, endangered, or threatened species, such as wood storks, bald eagles, and certain species of bats, which control insects naturally, all of which have been spotted in these woods and are on the Charleston's endangered list. These dense areas of trees and shrubs also serve as natural noise buffers in any condition, which is critically important with the I-526 bridge directly beyond this tract. Dense trees and shrubs may reduce noise by 5 to 10 decibels for every 30 meters width of woodland, which can reduce noise to the human ear by approximately 50%. In closing, I, my neighbors, many of whom you've heard from or will hear from tonight, and 417 other petitioners oppose the granting of this variance and the removal of any grand trees. Therefore, I implore the esteemed council members to weigh the degree of support, both from residents in their perspectives, as well as the legal perspective you heard earlier, against this petition and their decision. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And with that, my comment is concluded.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kelly. Appreciate that very much. Eric, do we have the next person?
Yes, Scott, if you could unmute Robert Schroeder. Robert, can you hear us?
Now, I think, am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Excellent. Mr. Schroeder, this is Chairman Adrian. I'm going to swear you in for the record. If you would state your name and your address, and then the floor will be yours, okay?
Yes,
All right. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I sure do.
Excellent. If you would state your full name and your address.
My name is Robert Schrader. I live at 179 King George Street, Daniel Island. Just like Andrea, I live across the street from this development.
Excellent. Thank you. You may proceed.
First, I'd like to go along with what Andrea was saying. And again, Mr. Emmanuel Ferguson was going along the line of, is there community support or objection? You heard that there were 2 HOAs that were either in favor or didn't object. They've also been the ones that have had the attention, the discussions with Stanley Martin, and have some concessions made to them. Against that, if you take a look at the map, or the visual, the photo that Eric had put up a little while ago, take a look at the marsh. Take a look at what's across from it. There are 29 homes along our street that face that property. You see just the very edge of it there. There are 29 homes. Look beyond that, there's another row. Behind that, there's another row. Behind that, there's another row. There's not a single person on that side of the marsh that supports this. Andrea's already said she's got 417 signers. We've got over 200 on a new petition, and that's just in the last 2 days. So again, don't get the impression there's a groundswell of support. There's not. As I mentioned, I live about 50 yards across from this land. One of our concerns, as I'll get to it, is that we have not been part of this process so far. We only learned about it, I think it was July 1st of this year. I see this land every morning when I get up. I look outside my window and there it is. And I am very concerned about how it is developed, since I have to look at it and it has a very direct impact on my home and my life here on Daniel Island. I first want to suggest that you slowly read what Cody Linhart wrote. It very clearly lays out the legal basis for this entire variance hearing. And he very clearly lays out that there is no support. You have no choice but to deny this variance request. So I totally agree with what Cody has said, and I would reject the request outright for failure to meet the legal standard set for granting such a variance. When I first read the applicant's lawyer requesting the grant, I was absolutely struck, as a lawyer with over 40 years experience, by its absolute lack of serious consideration of the 4 required criteria. It was as if the variance was a foregone conclusion, which it should not be and cannot be. The law itself requires that it be rejected. As can be seen from the reaction here by those impacted, this is indeed a serious matter. Personally, let me just share that my family's home here is the culmination of some 12 moves over 45 years. We selected it because of its location, overall quality of life, and we look forward to living here for the rest of our lives. So we take this very seriously. I therefore encourage the board to very seriously consider the failings of the application under law by itself and deny the variance on that request on that basis alone. The variance is a legal exception that must be earned on that basis and not granted as a right. I also want to support the position that Mr. Linhart mentioned about this request should also be denied as being untimely or immature. Destroying irreplaceable oaks now simply to build a road that may never be needed for a phase 2 that hasn't yet even been considered is reason enough to reject the variance as being untimely and immature at this time. I also want to draw attention to the fact that we, as immediately adjacent homeowners, are more than concerned that we have had no effective notice of applicants' plans or the proceedings before the city of Charleston on its planned development that is a mere 50 yards away from us. And we've had no voice in this matter. We first learned about it from a neighbor's note in our mailboxes a few days before the last variance hearing was supposed to happen. Since then, we've struggled simply to come up to speed and see what Stanley Martin and the city have been doing since 2019. This included a virtual meeting yesterday with Stanley Martin, which frankly was very helpful and resolved a lot of questions, but it also raised new ones. And we were hopeful that we could continue to reasonably resolve our issues outside of the meeting, like the other HOAs did. But our suggestion of a short postponement to do this was turned down straight away, which brings us to today's meeting. As mentioned, I know that as a purely legal matter, Stanley Martin has failed in its burden of proof to satisfy all criteria required under state and local law before it can be granted the privilege of a variance to cut down 8 protected trees. The board really can't go any further than that under their duty to apply the law. It's over until Stanley Martin might again apply more seriously for a variance. In the meantime, we adjacent homeowners hope not to be shut out and to have a voice in the process going forward to arrive at a mutually agreeable and beneficial solution. We want to work with them, but we just can't. We have to know about the thing, and we also have to have the opportunity.
Thank you. If we can you wrap up quickly?
I can wrap up very quickly.
Thank you.
if you want other reasons, I've written a separate letter to the mayor and with a copy to our council person, which lays out a number of other reasons why this is objectionable. I'll limit myself very quickly here to the loss of trees. It's a bit of what Andrea just mentioned. Let's specifically consider the 8 grand trees in question. First off, there aren't 77 grand trees and 252 others that are growing in the middle of this plot. They're on the periphery. So when they say they saved 77 grand trees, you need to ask how many of those are on the periphery and already saved by the buffer zone. Same thing with the 252 others. It's misleading. But if you look at our situation, if you look at that picture again that Eric had, we are facing this property. Right behind it is the I-526 bridge. The only thing that separates us from that bridge is the canopy from this area. Once that canopy is gone, we get the noise, pollution, health effects, and so forth from that bridge. For that reason alone, you need to very carefully look at the removal of these 8 large, high canopy trees. It's an important part of that buffer. And in fact, if you look at a map, you'll see that they are directly in line, many of them, with our properties. So if you vote to remove these trees, you're voting to partly remove that canopy that protects us from I-526. So there's more than enough reasons for the board not to grant this variance, both legal and moral. We want you to do it for the benefit of we residents who will have to live here in the shadow of your decision and the serious repercussions that will be on us. And with that, I thank you, and please consider this carefully.
Thank you so much for your time and words. Eric, do we have the next person?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Scott, if you could unmute Ron Kessinger.
And if I can say, I don't know if everybody can hear me that's going to be speaking against. I would like everybody to do their best to keep their comments condensed, and if their opinions are the same as people that have already spoken, just maybe say echo or do or copy what they said, so we can keep things moving along.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I've got you. If it's all right, I will swear you in for the record.
Yes,
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
absolutely.
Excellent. If you would state your full name, address, and then you may proceed.
My name is Ron Kessinger. I reside at 185 King George Street on Daniel Island. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Eric, if you could put up the slide that you began with, where the 2017 plan compared to the current proposal, please. The side-by-side comparison, thank you. So as Eric had mentioned, the 2017 site plan was approved, I think in December or something of 2017. The original developer set aside on the point there's a HOA set aside area of 3.3 acres, which represents 20% of the entire acreage. It was set aside for a purpose. It was set aside because it's a flood area and truly not buildable. Now, if you look at the current 2020 proposed plan, you'll see the fact that there's lots now being built along this peninsula on the left side of your screen here, where they're building lots in the floodplain. I live right across from this, and I see on high tides, I see water coming up through there. If you walk through that area, you'll see marsh grass, 3 feet high. And these trees, 6 of the 8 trees are off this phase 2 going into this area that is going to be flooded in this new proposed site. So here we are building lots to a flood-prone area. What's changed from 2017, in addition to that, is that the city itself initiated a study by the mayor and paid by the taxpayers in 2019 to look at this area with the 29 flood study and initiative. And that your own flood study shows that even with a minor increase in sea level and high tides, this area is going to be underwater. So here we are talking about proposing this site with a road to a flood zone that is totally contrary to the city's initiative to have lots that will be underwater. And so I just have a hard time in reconciling this process of removing trees to build for lots in a flood-prone area that you have evidence and documentation that proves and supports that it is flood. It will be flooded under conditions. Just as a matter of fact, the NOA of Coastal Management just issued a report in April of this year of 2020, stating that the number of high tides has increased in 1970s from twice a year to, in 2010, it was now 11 per year. In the next 25 years, it's going to be 180 per year. So the city is putting itself into a situation of approving these lots along the marsh that will be flooded, and knowing the information that you have in front of you. So that's the end of mine. I appreciate the time, and I am done.
Thank you so much for your time and your words. Mr. Schultz, we have the next person.
Yes, indeed, but I don't see that the individual is on the list, but Larry Tyree, I don't see Scott, I don't see Larry Tyree there any longer. Do you agree?
I'm not, excuse me, I'm not seeing them either.
Yeah, okay. So we'll move on to, I see Steve Panko, Sherry Lynn registered, but Steve Panko I see is listed. Steve?
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Sherilyn Panko, and I did register, but I think I accidentally hopped on my husband's Zoom account or what have you.
Okay.
I'd still like to speak.
Yes, Mr. Chairman's going to ask you to,
Okay. Fantastic. I'll swear you in at this point. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Excellent. If you would state your full name and your address, and then you may proceed, and do your best, if you could, to keep it within 3 to 4 minutes for us.
Sure, absolutely. In fact, I'm going to set the timer on my phone to 3 minutes and hopefully make it half that. How's that? Hi, everybody. My name is Sherilyn Panko. I am a neighbor directly adjacent to this development. And interestingly, I'm the one who was walking by the development or the forest and saw a torn up notice face down on the ground in the middle of a pandemic, notifying us, quote unquote, that a huge development was going to happen right next to us without any of our input. During coronavirus, I think, even having it in a Starbucks would have probably been more effective. Now, granted, maybe the wind, maybe the wind tore down the sign, or that's what somebody was telling me on the board. However, I've had 4 signs in my yard with little wires on them, and they have yet to have blown over, even with the storm from yesterday. So the good news is the Lord works in mysterious ways, and I found the sign on the ground and quickly coalesced people so that they knew what was happening. People are very upset about this plan. I want to say that it must be frustrating for board members and all of you wonderful Eric Schultz and all the people that have worked for 18 months on this project. And then you have a community person that comes in and says, we don't want this, when we don't necessarily have the expertise and the knowledge and the history of what you guys have been doing. I want to keep that in mind, that I understand that. However, how things I thought were supposed to work with community development is, a community, owner of a property, Stanley Martin, comes in with a plan, and then when the community gives feedback, we come together, coalesce, and work together to something that's going to work within our community, especially because we're the ones who are going to live amongst the community, who are going to be affected by the flood zones. Our children are going to drink their water sitting underneath the trees, and no offense to anybody else who's had input, that means we have a bigger buy-in and more skin in the game. Therefore, we want our words to be taken into account. Now, I'm a layperson, and I don't want to have what happened in Mixon with the Stanley Martin development, where if you guys have ever been over there, there's like tiny trees and shrubs that are dying that they planted a year ago, and everybody busted out and left. I don't want a blow and go phenomena here in Daniel Island. We have worked too hard to make this island award-winning all over the world with 2 Arbor Day Foundation Awards and International Urban Land Institute Awards, Audubon Awards, etc. And when I look at this plan, I see a lot of effort and determination and probably some good stuff, but just setting aside floodplains as part of the natural resource that we're preserving, I think we can do better. And I also know, as the wife of a developer who's developed more than 10 million square feet of commercial real estate, that the undue burden that they're allowing of having to maybe not build as many places and work around the trees is absolutely untrue and unnecessary. Stanley Martin has development properties all over the country and are raking it in. It will not hurt them to work around what the community needs are, preserve some trees, and make this a more of a Kiowa place versus Vegas. So that's all I have to say. And thank you so much for your consideration. You guys do so much as far as the board and everybody working for us when we're all sleeping and enjoying our lives. So I appreciate you having an open mind and thinking about including us more as the community into this process and allowing us to give more input. I think this can be a win-win. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time and your words. Eric, we'll look for the
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the list of individuals registered to speak in opposition. Our last speaker is Councilmember Marie Del Chapo.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Marie.
Good evening. How are y'all doing?
Very good.
Good.
Excellent. If you would allow me to swear you in for the record, and then to state your full name and address, you may begin.
Yes,
All right. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
My name is Marie Del Chapo. I live at 3006 Haswell Street on Daniel Island. As Mr. Schultz recognized, I am the city councilwoman here for District 1, including all of Daniel Island. And I believe, and Eric, if you're allowed to answer a question real quick, the applicant has a chance to come back after us and speak, correct?
That's
So
correct.
if I ask some questions, they'll be able to address them?
That is the chairman's role, and I believe they have a rebuttal, and then.
Okay. Thank you for that. So a couple questions as we've moved through this conversation. So originally in 2017, when there was the approval for the removal of 5 trees, now we're looking at 8, and I'm just wondering where the difference is. Is it 3 trees that were once, allowed that 100-foot HOA? Is that where the
Okay,
3 additional trees are?
I'll try and clarify that. So the 2017 plan on the left of the screen share now did authorize the removal of 5 grand trees.
Mm-hmm.
The plan on the right actually saves one of those 5, and the 8 that are in front of the board tonight are in addition to. So holistically, if you were to look at it, it would have been 13, but it's really 12 in total. But the original, the previous approval carries over because the city recognized a major change in the concept plan.
Okay. So it's 5 from 2017.
Reduced to 4 because they saved an additional
4
1.
and now 8. So
Yes.
We're net 12.
That's correct.
Okay. And, I know there's concerns over stormwater and flooding, et cetera. And I do want folks to understand that as we move through the process, all of those issues start to flesh out. So, this isn't necessarily set in stone, so to speak, as you move through that TRC process, as Eric has talked about. You've got to go through stormwater and all those other city departments. So I did want to address that, because I know that stormwater and that flood study is very important, and I want that to be recognized. What is do you know the difference in the canopy proposed to be removed by these 12 versus what is being mitigated?
I could not answer that. If the approval moves forward, they would come back with a mitigation plan, and they select the size tree that they would plant. So that could vary. The minimum typically available in the nursery industry is 2.5. And again, species dependent. I couldn't tell you how large that crown would be. And I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay. You know, and I think too, we all recognize that this has been zoned for development from the get-go, and it's had lots of different iterations. I think the sentiment that the residents have expressed, and that I carry too, is, you know, and something that I'm constantly hearing is, we were not made aware, we were not made aware, we were not made aware. And so while I appreciate the due diligence on Stanley Martin's side to really draw in those folks along Fairbanks and work with them, I think there was, you know, and I don't know if it was intentional or not. I'm not making any accusations by any means, but to, you know, jump across the marsh and go over to King George Street. And so that's something that it raises concern for me, that those residents over there were not afforded the same opportunity and the same drawing in as those on Fairbanks. And I've spoken with many of the residents over on King George and have said to them, you know, I remember, I think it was my first day as neighborhood association president back several years ago, when I went before the planning commission about this. And even at that time, there was involvement with the folks from Fairbanks, but not over there on the park side. So regardless of what happens tonight, and knowing that, you know, chances are this is going to be developed, if we can really look at everyone who surrounds this area, even if it's not a traditional adjacency, and draw them into the fold and draw them into these conversations. And I think, you know, as we work through this and things reach more of their finality, then it's, you know, just a little bit more accepting on all sides. And I hope that Stanley Martin is agreeable to that.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and your words. Eric, I guess we can unmute the applicant. We will go back to them for a rebuttal.
That is correct. That concludes all the individuals for comment and speaking.
Hello?
Hey there.
Can you hear?
Yes, if you just state your name once again, and then you can have the floor.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Cheryl Shown. I'm an attorney here with Nexus Pruitt in Charleston. I'm very honored to be here this evening on behalf of Stanley Martin Homes. And I too appreciate the opportunity to address this board and those who have participated thus far, and those who have not participated actively tonight, but are also interested in what is ongoing here. I understand the concern.
Adrian, if I could interrupt, are you in the office of Seaman Whiteside? So have you been sworn in, or do I need to swear you in?
I'm in the office of Seaman Whiteside. I'm there.
Okay.
I'm the counsel for Stanley Martin.
Excellent. I just wanted to make sure that you were present when we did the original swearing in. Sorry. Thank you.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And I do appreciate the current concerns, and most importantly, my client is sensitive to the concerns of the residents as well as the concerns of the trees about which we're meeting here tonight. Those who have offered comment and those who haven't may rest assured that my client has taken steps and has been represented to those present, that it's worked very hard over the course of this development to meet all requirements, both to be before the board tonight and to have this variance presented to it. With all due respect as to the legal analysis, to Mr. Lenhart, who is a colleague and who is very well respected in the legal community, there was a bit of a gap in the interpretation of what was presented by Seaman Whiteside on behalf of my client. And if you go through there, what actually was indicated is on section C, it says, for all these reasons and below. So actually it was not taking them one by one, but as a whole. Section C reading, because of these conditions, that being the foregoing conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, and due to the abundance of large trees on the site. And then that goes, a perfect segue into, we all are concerned about development. We're all concerned about trees and the environment. However, if we applied some of the comments here tonight to their strictest application, there would be no application before this board. There would be nobody present to oppose or to support it, because there would not be a Daniel Island as we know it at this moment. All development requires some compromise, and my client has gone to great lengths to reach that compromise. And I understand the concern with the removal of the trees, but we also have to be constantly aware of the number of trees, the minimum number of trees. This is a minimum number of trees that it intends to leave there, and that's some almost 330. There may be more. There will also be a follow-up mitigation. So with that, I would respectfully request that all requirements have been met and this variance should be granted, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
This is Russ Seaman with Seaman Whiteside. I've also been sworn in. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. You know, the whole hardship argument is a little bit above my head in terms of technicality, but what I can say is that, you know, in my opinion, this site does have a very unique hardship. There's no other project in the vicinity that has the same size, shape, flood zone, dispersal of trees, grade fluctuation, trees in low spots, trees in ditches. It's a very unique and very much challenging site. Flood zones and road elevations require a certain amount of fill for life safety reasons, which do not work directly adjacent to low sitting grand trees. And it takes a lot of space to preserve these trees, which unreasonably burdens the property when applied to every tree. We've created these bigger spaces to adequately preserve the quality grand trees as we worked with city staff through the site planning process. We have a great plan that's very thoughtful in preserving these high quality grand trees. Furthermore, we have a really strong buffer that we're committing to around the edge, better than our neighbors and other developments on Daniel Island, way better than what's across the street or across the marsh at King George. It's double the undisturbed area that they were required. It's going to preserve the view for our neighbors. We're happy that many of our grand trees are located here, which was kind of presented as a negative, as it protects everybody's views from the marsh and contributes to the beauty that is the marsh. The flood zone comments were pretty much irrelevant to our request, but we're confident that our proposal follows all laws and regulations on the matter. We've completed an endangered species report. There's none present on the property. We do not have any issues there, as was alluded to. And I just want to remind everyone that this land is part of the Daniel Island PUD and has been intended for development for close to 25 years when the PUD was adopted. Stanley Martin is building a sensitive neighborhood here. You know, based on what the PUD allows, they could put all townhouses here, but they're trying to do something that fits into the neighborhood. It also appears that,
you know, many of the homes that are facing this property were developed in the past 15 years. And, you know, this has been shown in the development agreement and PUD for Daniel Island for close to 25. So it's been known that this property would be developed. There's been a lot of emotion expressed and a lot of anti-development sentiment, as often happens when a new project occurs near other homes that have already been developed. But the fact of the matter is that we're preserving a huge amount of quality grand trees and asking to remove a handful of lower quality ones to better preserve the ones that matter. And that's the basis of why we're here. And I would ask that you please support this request.
Thank you. Is that everybody that wants to speak on the rebuttal?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we are going to close this, Chairman Adrian. We're going to close this application to the public. It will be opened only to the board for discussion and questions.
So,
And,
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't aware of the names of every speaker who signed up, and upon learning of a couple of names, I think it would be best if I recuse myself from making a decision on this one. So I think I'm going to have to remove myself from discussions and from the rest of this meeting.
Hey, can we hang on to Emmanuel for legal questions though?
Yeah, you can.
Rather than you going off.
No, I think after looking at the list of speakers, I think it's best if I recuse myself. I would have done it earlier, but I didn't know who all was speaking. So I'm probably going to have to bow out of this one, unfortunately.
okay. I think that is what it is. So if I could start with questions, because until right at the end there was, in my mind, I was thinking that the request was only to add 3 more trees to be removed from the 2017 approval. Instead, it's those 5 were approved, they keeping 1, plus we're adding 8 more. And the first question, Eric, is, I think you had answered it, but I'm just not sure because I believe all approvals were for 2 years, and now we're 3 years removed. So how does that one carry over?
Well, that's a good question, and Lee may have to jump in, but because they were beginning to act on the original concept plan, and it got to TRC and all these issues about the technicalities of really saving and maintaining trees, based on the number one condition that came to light, if you look there, number 4, must work with staff and basically eliminating the need for tree wells. Well, if you had seen an earlier rendition of this when it got into plat review and road construction, they were really tight on trees and producing and showing low retaining walls and yard inlets. And there was actually a version that they were proposing to put small sump pumps in some of these tree wells and what have you. So that led on to a modification to the concept plan, in which we were able to approve at staff level because lots may have been reduced and the framework of the road network basically remained the same. So that was a zoning administrator call. So that kind of became another land development plan to move forward. So within that time period, Lee, if you want to jump in to correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, but
I think you summed it up pretty well. Each successive approval in the development process results in a vested right that carries forward. So that's how we view the process and each successive approval, and so they haven't let the variances expire because they've been moving through the process.
Okay. All right. Very good. So then I guess my next question is going to go to the applicant. I've got 2 questions. This is Chairman Adrian. And the questions would be that there was the mention of lot reduction. Can you let me know that initially there were going to be 120 lots and now there's only 100? What was the reduced amount? And the second was that I heard something about 2 phases. Is there, looking at this proposed drawing here, can you outline for us what the 2 phases are?
I'll have to unmute Seaman and Whiteside again, Scott.
They also alluded to, it wasn't clear, the person's voice dropped off, but they said that they were meeting Daniel Island's requirements and it was about lot numbers, I thought, if that can be rolled into Joel's question.
Hello? Can you hear us?
Yes.
All right, Councilman Joel, previously on the concept plan, the approved concept plan that Eric had pulled up in 2017, it was 89 lots. And we have now gone to a reduction to 83 lots.
Thank you. How about the phasing?
Pardon?
Phasing.
That's about phasing.
What's the?
We got
What's
2
the
phases.
question?
Yeah. What's the question, Commissioner? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
The question, this is Chairman. So the question was, there was mention either by opposition, I believe it was by opposition, that this was going to be developed in 2 phases. And if you could let me know where is the line of delineation from phase 1 to phase 2, or if it's going to be all 1 phase.
It is going to be 2 phases, and that line of delineation basically is along the western edge of the marsh, kind of south of the 50-foot right-of-way label, and comes up along the 50-foot right-of-way that curves around that B-rated tree and goes north into that 20-foot alley where the yellow, the C-rated tree is proposed for removal. Yep. And then basically almost shoots in like a straight line north towards the marsh.
Okay.
Like it's somewhere in one of those lots. So there's not a lot number there, so I don't have that information to provide you. But basically, that whole portion east of the 20-foot alley is phase 1, and phase 2 is west of that. In general speaking.
And
okay.
Mr. Adrian Patterson here was Seaman Whiteside. I was also sworn in earlier, but just to clarify the phasing, it will be constructed at once. The purpose of the phasing is for closeout purposes and flexibility there, but it will be constructed essentially at one time. There would not be a second demobilization and mobilization.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And how about Ms. Barton's question about a Daniel Island requirement for number of lots?
It sounded something like that, but the person's voice dropped off when they were saying it.
No, I believe Russ had mentioned that it was about the buffers, but earlier we were approved for 89 lots and now we're at 83. So I mean, we're still meeting requirements as far as lot counts. It's just I think he was referring to the buffers, ma'am.
I believe it was when we were discussing Eric's recommendation of making that an open space instead of on the top of the drawing where you have, I think, 2 blues and a green.
Yes.
And Eric has it shown as an open space.
Yeah. And what I was alluding to there, ma'am, was that we appreciate Eric's sketch. But we would like to work with staff through the TRC process and try to accommodate those trees into HOA spaces. But we just wanted to mention to the board that we would prefer to definitely work with staff because we can't guarantee that we'll have exactly what Eric's showing because we obviously have to adhere to Daniel Island requirements. We wanted to let the board know we will take this into account with trying to make those trees in more of an HOA space. But obviously work with staff through the TRC process.
Well, we constantly have the situation where things get approved and the trees are well into the lot and then it, comes back with requests to remove. So I, for one, You know, if this goes forward, I think it's something you would need to consider, and you know, you might lose a lot in the process. So I'll just say that. Now, when you have the inundation notes in those green spaces, the trees that
In the drainage exhibit?
Yep. Now, are you anticipating that to only be fresh water, or are you anticipating salt water in there as well? And if so,
No.
irrigate the trees to get the salt water out?
That will strictly be fresh water. That will be, you know, those bases are collecting stormwater runoff from the neighborhood. Our ultimate outfalls to the marsh are protected with, you know, tidal surge protection means so that those ponds do stay fresh water and they do not become salt water. And the few trees, like the 3 yellow trees there on the triangular pond close to the Fairbanks, those would only be inundated in, you know, upper end storm events, which are, you know, less common, less typical, but ones that we certainly have to design and plan for.
Hey, Patterson, this is Andrew. Question I have, coming west of that triangular pond, you've got a blue tree, it looks like, in the pond. How's the grading going to affect that tree?
Yeah, Andrew, so that, actually where that blue tree you're asking about, there's actually an existing pond there. So it is incorporated, that is incorporated into the slope. We are not planning to cut into that tree protection zone. It will certainly be, you know, worked around and would not be impacted. So it's already on a slope that's there today.
I guess. Okay. Eric, we know for a fact that this property was posted legally, properly, correctly.
Yes, we meet our minimum requirements, and you know, we try our best. We've looked at different paper styles, the whole 9 yards, but you know, wind and rain we can't account for. But it was posted for the earlier meeting, which was deferred, and then reposted for this meeting.
Okay.
And the paper requirement, that's why we had the delay due to a glitch with our advertising with the Zoom address, but we had to delay just 1 day to meet the 15-day in the Post and Courier.
Understood. I will say one thing to the board that I found interesting that I had not given proper consideration, and I want to thank Cody for pointing it out. He, you know, we do tend to give preferential treatment to A's and B's and not so much C's and D's, but, you know, the ordinance does say grand trees. It doesn't say the best grand trees, or, you know, it says grand trees. So I thought that was an excellent point. I appreciate him bringing that to our attention.
Thank you. This is
Paula Murphy. I have a question for the applicant. That the 20-foot alley in the middle of the property, is that the purpose of that alley to serve the townhomes on, I guess it's the eastern side, as those are alley-fed townhomes fronting the HOA space? Is that the purpose of that alley?
That's correct. Those are to service those townhomes that front that HOA basin there. Yes.
Yeah, which we're slid back and we're set for those trees.
Okay, but you also have some front-loaded townhomes drawn here on the southern side as well.
Yes, right there when you come in through the entrance off of Fairbanks Drive, and those meet the requirements of the DI pod.
Okay, thank you.
Or what you were looking at, Paula, thinking that you could have the alley service the first 3 townhomes? Is that where you were going with that?
I was just thinking if you eliminate that alley, that saves that C-grade tree by front loading those townhomes on the regular right-of-way streets.
So Paula, this is Chairman Adrian. I like what you're saying. I think that I've had the same questions in looking at the plan, and it's going to take, I think, the applicant to explain why trees are going out. Like the tree that's shown on the 20-foot alley where there's the front-loaded townhouses. That would be in the back of those townhouses. Is that one sitting in a ditch that needs fill, which is why that tree's got to come out, or why is that one called for removal? The tree that you were specifically talking about in that alley, if they adjust the plan, they take the townhouses out and divide that space into 2 lots, you probably could keep that tree, potentially even the one that's sitting in the road. Then you've got the tree that's right up by the 2 trees right by where it says 38-foot right of way. One of them's on a lot, one of them's in the road. Why does that get removed as a C grade tree? But when I look at the B grade tree, just down away from it, where we've got the blue, the green, and the blue on that 38-foot right of way, that one could be saved, but the other one can't. Like I'm just struggling following some of the trees to be removed versus not.
A lot of that, Joel, came
Are we on?
the elimination of that circle. We had that center line of the road, and on that exhibit, you may be able to pick up a small ditch line where that circle was shown in the 2017. And, we were going down the road that the circle was a good thing, but then with grade and everything, it just put the A grade trees in a hole. So at the suggestion of the city, they moved that road to the south.
I see that. So that taking the circle out really made it easier to save those 3 trees on the, I guess, the northeast there. But then if you go just to the left of that, 1, 2, the third lot to the left of where those are, there's a C grade tree right next to where it says 38-foot right of way on that lot that's called to be removed. Is there a ditch right there?
Yep. I would like to stress that tree in particular has a heavy lean, and even our certified arborist would like to mention too that C trees can be hazardous, but a proper investigation could be done. But just please keep that in mind, that even C trees have a rate of decline. And this one in particular, if you go to the photos, has a heavy lean to it, which presents the hazard for even trying to maintain it on that lot. So it's a public safety issue.
I think it would be helpful if we had topo on here, because part of the whole argument is about keeping the existing. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if that was a question or not.
No, it was just, I wanted to see that, because when the side-by-side plans are showing, it's the old plan that was showing the topo. That's kind of hard to see on this scale.
Eric, could we go back to the photo sheet?
I was going to clarify that the topo is shown on our the drainage exhibit sheet that was included with the submittal package.
Oh, we're looking at it. Thank you.
Jeff, where would you like to go?
The photo sheet. I just wanted to see if we could pick the one tree we were talking about with the lean.
Okay.
Not sure what number that is.
What number is it? I can't.
I can't see it on here either. the one that's right above the 38-foot right away.
I think it's either 6 or 8, I think.
Yeah, it's a single-digit number.
6, maple.
There's number 8 with the lean 33-inch C.
Yep, it's number 8.
Okay, thank you.
As you'll see, those are both notes from the certified arborist and a site visit prior to the BZA. Again, just to note what's going on with the tree.
Just curious, do y'all know which direction that lean is in? Is that towards the road or back towards the lot, or?
That's towards the, I believe, lot and part of the road. It's basically over that front part of the lot.
Gotcha. Okay.
Did that have a cavity starting in the base, or was that just shadow? In tree 8.
It says hollow branching and hollow trunk.
Because it looks like there's a
Cavity in there.
Yeah, it is a deep, it's a hollow portion of the tree right there. If you look at the left photo, it kind of curves up in there, and that tree just has a chunk taken out in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's hollow there.
Well, you know, y'all, we could always go tree by tree too. We don't have to approve all the trees as a group or disapprove the trees as a group. I mean, we could disapprove the project or approve the project, but if it goes the way of approval, we can always do the trees individually. I'm just mentioning that as.
Anybody else have questions for the applicant or for Eric?
Amanda, you disappeared. I can't hear you.
What I was going to ask was the two neighborhoods that the one that said that they weren't either in support or not in support, and then there was another neighborhood that said they were in support. Where are they located as compared to, which ones are they?
Okay, so I assume, I don't know for sure the boundaries of the two POAs, maybe the applicant, but I believe the south of this image where you see the Shepherd's Hook kind of configuration of the condos, there's a building to the south that's off the screen, and they're near the historic large alley of live oaks next to Governor's Park, and then the condo building on the island that has the dock shown. I think that's one POA because they were developed later, and then the 6 units in the Shepherd Hook configuration are the other ones. So the one that spoke to trails and the preservation of that large oak and the amenity center that has to be built just south of the pond here in this image by Stanley Martin Homes is the group that supports, I think, the project. And then the Shepherd's Hook configuration condo owner association is the one that stated that they're I think, what was it, not opposed but not in support.
For or against, yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hunt, Roger Hunt.
Oriole?
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct, Eric. That is correct, Eric.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? I'll put out there that I think that maybe there's, not knowing the full history, if there was really just a Zoom meeting yesterday with the owners of King George, and that was their first real involvement of being notified of the project, maybe we should look at a deferral to give the applicant more time to speak with those neighbors before coming back here, and maybe together with those neighbors, they can come up with a plan to get some support from that side. I also feel like I still don't know why some of these trees are being requested for removal versus possibly seeing if you can bend a road or do something here or there. So just putting that out there. And if there's no questions, then somebody should entertain a motion.
Joel, I would agree with you because the thing that concerned me also was, I believe it was Leslie, I don't have her last name, who lives on Fairbanks, I think. She said there's a petition of 417 people, and I thought I heard reference to another petition, and maybe that was the folks across the way. So it sounds like there's a lot of community-wide opposition at present. And I think that what you said, to throw the net a little wider and get more input, might be the thing to do.
Yes, because so, obviously we could, Amanda, you're correct. We could go tree by tree and do a vote. We could vote for a deferral.
I'll make a motion to move for deferral.
I second it.
All right, so there is a motion by Amanda Barton for a deferral, and then the second was by Nell Postel. Then I'll do the roll on that. If we just go through and you'll say aye in favor or nay not in favor. It's going to start with Ms. Barton.
Aye in favor.
All right, Ms. Postel.
Aye in favor.
Mr. Hargett.
Hey, not in favor.
All right. Ms. Murphy. Where'd Paula go?
I was on mute. Yay in favor.
Mr. Webb.
Yay in favor.
And myself, Mr. Adrian, I'll say aye in favor. And I just really feel like we need the applicant to approach those homeowners on the King George side a little more, try to get some community support, and then we can hopefully resume this and resolve everything next month. So the final vote is 5-1 for deferral. We thank everybody for their time. So
thank you, board, for your time.
Thank you. So we'll finally move into item B1, which is 1229 Clements Ferry Road. And the TMS numbers are 263-00-02003 and 263-1502-023. Request a one-year extension of the following variance granted by the board on 8/7/19. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 4 grand trees, and request a variance from section 54-327 to allow a reduced impervious construction setback near the bases of 17 grand trees zoned SR1. Eric, we'll go to you.
Yes, I'll go through the slides, but again, this is relative to our vested rights ordinance, and the original approval was in 2017. The 2-year expiration date was approaching, so they came to the board last year in August, and you all extended it, and they have the right to extend that original approval 5 times. So basically, this is their application to request that extension. That's the property. It's, I believe, phase 3 of what we call Oak Bluff. It's zoned SR1, being developed as a neighborhood district, or not a neighborhood district, a cluster development. As you can see, they're migrating through. Phase 1 is where most of the homes are. Phase 2 is where there aren't so many homes, and then, of course, the wooded area. There's the approval from 8/3/17. Amanda was chairperson, and then 8/7/19 for the extension. This is the layout. So staff recommends approval to allow another 1-year extension. We have to bring back Emmanuel Ferguson.
Yeah. Eric, thank you. Do we need the applicant to present?
They are present, and Mr. Chairperson, I do have one individual to speak, Ellis Lesseman. I believe he's the attorney for the developer. But should I repeat everything for Emmanuel? Did he get turned back on? Emmanuel, do you hear us?
I hear you. The only thing I heard was Mr. Ellis Lesserman for the applicant, the attorney for
Okay,
the applicant.
I'll briefly go through it very quickly again. The application is to request a 1-year extension. Last August, they were in front of the board and received a 1-year extension from the original in 2017. And it was for a number of grand trees and reduction of impervious construction. There's the application. The site is the remaining portion of what we call Oak Bluff up on Clements Ferry Road.
Oh, this is item B1.
Excuse me?
Yeah, this is item B1, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I reviewed that from the PowerPoint while I was on hiatus from the last one. So I believe, I read the application and reviewed the public public portion that you had from the agenda, if that's what you're going to go over. So I'm comfortable moving on if everyone else is.
Right. So there's phase 1 and phase 2. There's the approval forms. That was the original approval. So staff recommends approval for 1 more year.
Excellent. I guess since the applicant has waited this long, we should bring them up. We can swear them in. And
Yes, we have both Les Phillips and also Ellis, I believe.
all right, so we're going to unmute them.
Scott's working on that. Les and Ellis, can you hear us?
This is Ellis Leisman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And Les Phillips.
Very good. Thank
Excellent. Gentlemen, this is Chairman Adrian. I'm going to swear you in for the record. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
I do.
Excellent. If you have anything to add, you're welcome to do so. State your name and your address. Otherwise, I think we could, if there's no one opposed, we could probably go to the board for discussion and a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Ellis Leisman. My office is at 418 King Street, Suite 301. And again, I am the attorney on behalf of the applicant. I appreciate y'all's service and patience and know that you've already had a lengthy meeting. Again, as Eric mentioned, this is our request for a second extension of a vested right that's within the period of the 5 extensions. All I wanted to do was add that we are working very diligently and closely with the city and the technical review committee. I think we're a matter of days or perhaps a week or 2 away from having the TRC process completed. So this extension was just necessary to allow us to carry through that period, and we thank you for your consideration. The variance was considered and granted by the BZA, and we just would ask for that approval to be extended in accordance with state law and local ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, there's nobody opposed present, correct?
There is not. There is not. Nobody registered or no comment.
Then we'll close the public portion of the meeting for this application and open it to the board for any discussion or a motion.
I make a motion we approve with staff recommendations.
I second. Paula Murphy.
All right. So the motion is for approval with staff conditions by Nell Postel. It was seconded by Paula Murphy. I'll go down the roll and we'll just ask you to say either aye in favor or nay not in favor. Ms. Barton?
Aye in favor.
Ms. Postel?
I in favor.
Mr. Hargett?
Aye in favor.
Mr. Ferguson?
Aye in favor.
And Ms. Murphy?
Aye in favor.
Mr. Webb?
Aye in favor.
And Mr. Adrian says aye in favor also. Unanimous 7-0 decision. Thank you for your patience. And just for the record, I'll say that
That's sad.
year 2021 up there looks really good right now.
Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Chairman, item B2 has been deferred, so I'm going to zip through some slides.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. So now we are at item B3. Item B3 is 1362 Old Town Road. The TMS is 415-00-00054. Request a special exception from section 54-511 to allow a non-hard parking surface for an office development zoned GO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the application. This is the site. It recently got rezoned out of the larger SR1 tract to GO. And this is the future site of the Charleston County Park and Recreation Park that will be, I guess, due south of Charlestown Landing. I don't know all the particulars of the agreement when the owner of that tract willed it to the county, or maybe it was to the Low Country Land Trust. In turn, they sold it to the county. They'll speak to that. I always get confused who was first, but it did allow for the Low Country Trust's headquarter building, office facility to be built here. So they had to carve out a piece of land. It wraps around the city firehouse. It's the wooded section, very incredibly beautiful property. Obviously, the land trust wants to develop something very light on the land and very sensitive to the project. There's a 100-foot buffer adjacent to Old Town Road. They're going to meander a nice entry drive through the trees and then into this circular parking lot. And our ordinance says that for office, you need to have a hard parking surface for the minimum number of parking spaces required. So the site slopes to the south into a wetland system. So they're looking at LID type of development practices, stormwater practices. Staff recommends approval with the condition that they just have to provide a 20-foot paved apron at the right-of-way line just to prevent whatever material that is loose or dusty, whatever, from tracking out into the major public right-of-way.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. The applicant is
by
present.
the way, there is nobody that submitted comments or signed up to speak.
The applicant is not present.
Yes, the applicant, we need to unmute Tom Hutto and Edward Gwynn. Edward and Tom, can you hear us? Unmute yourself, Edward or Tom.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. This is Tom Hutto.
How about Ed?
This is Eddie Gwynn. Can you hear me now?
Is there any other member of your team that I need to identify?
Well, we've got like 5 lawyers here, but I think they're not gonna speak tonight.
Okay. Very good.
Excellent.
Chairman, you have the floor.
Yeah, since I can hear y'all can hear me, I'm going to swear you in for the record. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Excellent. If you would state your name, your address, then you can speak if you have anything you'd like to add to Eric's presentation.
This is Eddie Gwynn with Gel Engineering. We're the civil engineers for the project. Our office is at 2040 Savage Road. And I have nothing to add to Eric's presentation. I'm hopeful that this is uncontroversial. I'm glad to discuss it further with you, but I'm also glad to let you go home.
That sounds wonderful. If there's nothing to be added and there's no one speaking against, I will close the public portion of the meeting for this application. We'll open it to the board.
Joel,
for discussion, questions.
Real quick.
Okay.
I want to make the point. I'm the Tom Hutto, 4533 Hagen Road, Meggett, South Carolina. I'm the vice chairman of the board of the Low Country Land Trust. And the property, Eric got it right, was left to the land trust by Emily Ravenel Farrow, and the land trust in turn sold the majority of it to Charleston County PRC, and we retained 4 acres for an office. the property is encumbered with a conservation. We're happy that the property is encumbered with a conservation easement, but the easement reflects the fact that this is an old, 55 plus acres of farmland, and it requires that we not have impervious, that we have pervious surfaces, and that we not pave the roads, for example. And so on the 4 acres that we have, we're looking to build, I think it's like 9,000 to 10,000 square feet, which is pretty light development. I always feel there's a way to do things less densely, and you can save grand trees, for example. With that in mind, one of the reasons we're here is because the conservation easement, which is held by the Historic Charleston Foundation, doesn't permit us to pave the roads. So we wouldn't want to anyhow. We're trying to do sustainable development. That's our goal and intent. Having said that, though, we are a little bit hamstrung by the easement. And that's all my comments.
Excellent. Thank you for that input. Sorry to cut you off there, but now we'll close the public portion of the meeting and open it to the board for discussion or a motion.
I've got a quick question for Eddie. What's this being edged with? The gravel, especially those parking spaces that are kind of akimbo.
It's going to be a metal edging product. I think that's the plan. It's actually John Tarkany is our landscape architect, and he's the one detailing that, but he's not on the call today.
Okay.
We have like 20, we have about 17 employees right now, and this is being built with the intent of having up to 25 employees. And so we're really envisioning more of a woodland type parking situation where we have enough of a pervious surface, for standing up to vehicles, but not trying to be real. We'll have some lining on the parking, but it's not going to be, I don't think, real distinct.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Robert Marvin's old office in Walterboro, where you just sort of parked in the trees and not everything was perfectly right angles and whatnot.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah.
We actually specifically have looked at some of his work and coming up with a design.
Yep. I make a motion, we move to approve the staff recommendations.
Hang on a sec.
Anybody else? Oh, there's Andrew.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, I presume that they're going to pave the handicap parking?
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. This has
TRC's going to make them do that, right?
This has been to TRC. Now, they can be light on the land, meaning they can do pavers and still be considered hard for Janet Schumacher ADA and allow water to perk through. But yes.
Okay. Second, sufficient paved is kind of a nebulous term. I'd like that to say a minimum of 26 feet.
I'm sorry for being that way in my terminology, but the ordinance says 20-foot paved apron at the right of way. And I stated that, I just didn't type it, I'm sorry.
You think 20 is going to be enough?
I believe so, because then if you look at that image, there's a pretty big throat in right of way. The right of way is really wide there. That paved, that gray area is right of way. They would just have to do an additional 20 feet back into the property.
Oh, so they're going 20 feet back in.
Yes, sir. That's the ordinance.
You're not counting what's between the road and the
property line. And I don't think 20 feet will break the bank as far as their covenant.
Oh, no, I agree. I thought that that's what you were accounting. Right
no,
there.
I'm sorry. I said from the right-of-way line.
I missed that.
Back
Sorry.
into the property.
Okay. I'm good with that.
And again, that can be brick, pavers, whatever, to dress it up.
Yeah. All right, Amanda, I'm sorry.
No. We're good. Anybody else? I was going to make a motion if nobody else has comments. Well, I make a motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Second it.
Who was, I didn't get the second. Who was that?
Jeff.
Second was Jeff?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion by Amanda Barton for approval with staff conditions, seconded by Jeff Webb. I'll go through the roll and say aye in favor or nay not in favor. Ms. Barton?
One in favor.
Ms. Postel?
I in favor.
Mr. Hargit?
Aye in favor.
Mr. Ferguson?
Aye in favor.
Ms. Murphy?
I in favor.
All right, Mr. Webb?
Aye in favor.
And Mr. Adrian is also aye in favor. So that is approved 7-0, unanimous. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
I thank you for your time and your service. Really, really do. And thank you for your approval. And y'all have a wonderful evening.
You too. So now we are at item B4. It is 3022 South Shore Drive. The TMS is 310-0000068. Request a variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of one grand tree, the zone PUD. Eric, it's
Yes, we'll need to, I'll go through my presentation, but Scott, Tim Cartman, and we'll ask if he has any other member of their team. So 3022 South Shore Drive. Here's the application. This applicant is also the owner of this lot that he bought on South Shore Drive. It's within a PUD. And it's one of the few remaining undeveloped lots because of trees, I believe. Note the canal in the back, which has an OCRM critical line. And this PUD has a buffer that is worded kind of strangely, where there's an average buffer requirement and can't go below a minimum. This is the survey. This is the survey with trees and the house. So note the critical line. Note that there's two very nice live oaks that are in the public right-of-way, which pretty much dictates where the driveway has to occur. It can't be far left, it can't be far right. So therefore it does kind of dictate that the house should be right on the lot, so you can access the lot more to on the left-hand side. So therefore, this site plan is not in for site plan review. We'll have to work with it a tad bit, possibly narrow up that driveway between the trees, put a little angle on it possibly, but the lot being 77 feet wide and vehicle turnaround and then the critical line buffer. And again, I'm not a single family plan reviewer. I'm not the expert, but I think that the patio slab will be permitted because that buffer line is an average.
I think somebody needs to mute their camera or their microphone.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So the tree, as you can see, it's a 15-17 trunk live oak with a trunk that really starts to grow away, oppose each other, and then with the crown and with it being kind of centrally located, I just don't see how we could, even with a very creative tiny house. The next image I want to show you, there's the existing double trunk, has a little bit of dead stub in it. But this one kind of shows how the lot falls off away from the road. It's kind of hard, but it does kind of fall away from the road. It slopes down. And of course, they'll have to build a building pad, and this is a drive under house. But the tree to the right and to the left are really critical. So it's a B, C. I think it's a low B, maybe more of a C due to this. Even though it's a live oak, I understand, but due to the opposing trunks, and then it actually looks a little thin in the crown. It's not the best looking live oak in my opinion. Staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 32 caliber inches of canopy trees on the lot. We'll do our best with the landscape plan. The residual inches will have to be made up via a contribution to the city street tree program. 4-foot chain link fence as tree protection barricades for others on the right of way in the site. And then for a certified, well, I didn't actually, yeah. I got something blocking my view just a minute here. Doing it off memory, basically. Yeah, have a certified IRA treat trees. That should be treat the trees. Sorry about that. To remain on the lot, and then must submit a landscape plan for staff approval. So, Mr. Tim, can you hear us, Tim? Unmute yourself, Tim.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Thank you, and thank you for being patient during a very long BZA meeting, being the last on the agenda.
It's very interesting. I thought it was something that I'd never seen before, and it's certainly something that I didn't expect. I hope you will choose favorably to let me remove this one tree so I can build my home.
And this is Chairman Adrian. I'm going to swear you in for the record, and then we'll let you present. So you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Excellent. So if you would, just for our record, state your name and your current address, and then anything you'd like to add to the presentation, please do.
My name is Tim Gartman. I live at 2542 North Castle Lane, Charleston, 29414. And Eric has outlined it very well, and his presentation is so much better than my feeble attempts. He's used some of the things that I've produced for him, but this is all new. We're trying to build a house there that would be the home of our dreams, hopefully. And with this one obstacle out of the way, we'll be able to move forward. That's about all I have to say. Thanks, Eric, so much for your help.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. And Eric, we don't have anybody registered to speak against or?
No, sir. Nobody registered or submitted comment.
Okay, fantastic. We will close the public portion of the meeting for this application, and it'll be opened up to the board for discussion. And I'll start. It's certainly not a massive footprint. You're looking at 30 by 50, 1,500 square foot footprint on the property. So, and thinking about that, you know, there's not a whole lot of other room to add. Sorry about the noise in the background there. So I would be in favor of the application.
This is Paul Murphy. I have a quick question. What was the reason that that you couldn't flip flop and have the driveway on the right hand side?
And Paula, in my opinion, and Tim can join in, but you have that massive live oak there. And I think even flipping it, you would still be into crown and pruning and just a little bit of a grading issue.
Amanda Barton, I have a quick comment. One is that, you know, the tree is, at least what I can tell here from the site plan, the tree is barely in the footprint of the house. And actually you have 4 feet more than you need for backing up the car. So the house could actually be 4 feet wider. It could be 34 by, 48 or something. And then you'd be, I mean, yes, you have some potential conflict with the driveway, but I agree 100% with Eric that 20 feet that's not even, I think a residential driveway, I thought it was 16 feet was the max on on a driveway apron, but I could be wrong with that. So, you know, that whole driveway could throat down until you get to the part where you're actually backing up out of the garages. That said, that tree didn't look that great, and I guess I would ask Andrew's opinion on that.
Well, I mean, that tree you could make great. You know, a little fertilizer. It's got, you know, it could be made great, but he's got two beautiful live oaks out front. In my opinion, yeah, take it or leave it. And the way that lot is and everything else, with he's not building a gargantuan mansion, I would be in favor of removing that tree. That's my opinion, obviously.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope everyone would feel the same way.
So
But to answer your question,
questions?
you could make that tree beautiful. You could. It would just take 8 years or so and some fertilizer and mulch, and she'd be handsome.
And no grading impact or more spaces around it as well.
Well, that's true. No grading. You can't be doing that.
Right.
And he probably wants still on that lot so that he's higher than the road. So that would impact the tree negatively too.
All right. Do we have any other questions, or is there a motion?
I make a motion we approve with staff recommendations.
I'll second that.
All right. Then the motion by Ms. Postel for approval with staff conditions, seconded by Mr. Hargett. I will go through the roll. Ms. Barton, yay or nay?
Yay.
All right. Or I'm sorry, it's aye. Sorry, aye or nay. Okay, Ms. Postel.
I in favor.
Mr. Hargett.
Aye.
All right, Mr. Ferguson.
I in favor.
Ms. Murphy.
In favor.
Sorry, I can't hear. Somebody's got to mute again.
No, I'm not on mute. I in favor and the last.
Excellent. Mr. Webb.
I in favor.
And Mr. Adrian is also aye in favor. So it's unanimous decision, 7-0. And thank you for waiting, and hope you enjoy your house.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well,
So
that concludes the August 6, 2020 Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. I thank you all once again for your great work, and thank you all for being present and working with my mistakes by delaying it one day and what have you, but we're always learning. So thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Everybody.
Thanks, Eric. Goodbye.